Thomas Paine's Common Sense by Mau Mau and Matthias. Thomas Paine was born January 29, 1737 to farmers Joseph and Frances Paine in Thetford, England, and he was raised a Quaker. He received little formal education in his youth, attending a grammar school until he was 13, where he started an apprenticeship under his father. He bounced from job to job until landing one as an excise officer, a tax collector/enforcer for the British government. There, he writes his first recorded political pamphlet in 1772, named The Case of the Officer Excise, where he expressed grievances of him and his fellow officers to hopefully convince Parliament to improve their situation by raising wages and improving working conditions. This ongoing effort to petition Parliament was for better working conditions would send him to London, where he would meet Benjamin Franklin, who soon convinced and helped Paine immigrate to the colonies, on a trip where he would almost die of sickness and scurvy. He arrived in 1774 in Philadelphia, right at the beginning of the Revolution. He published his Common Sense 2 years later on January 10th, 1776, anonymously. After the big success of his Common Sense, he becomes a widely respected author on political matters and goes on to write in support of the French Revolution in another greatly impactful piece called The Rights of Man. He died June 8, 1809 in New York. Common Sense was a revolutionary and innovative 47-page pamphlet which would go to sell over 100,000 copies in only a year, which was unprecedented for a political pamphlet. Thomas Paine published it anonymously at first to avoid British retribution and to not put himself before the cause of the revolution. Common Sense is divided into 4 different sections, boiling down to 3 main points. 1. The system of monarchy has always been flawed. 2. A government that wasn't serving in the best interest of its people was allowed and should be overthrown. 3. A democratic republic should be established in the place of a monarchy. Thomas makes the claim that monarchy was an invention created by the devil. I like to believe he meant it more metaphorically. He references biblical stories to prove its sinful nature. He argues all men were created equal, and that any division, such as that of a king and his subject, is unnatural and was not created through justifiable means. He argues that hereditary succession is unreasonable and doesn't promote good leadership. He goes on to say that many of the world's wars and strife are caused by the pride of kings. He argues that Britain has become more harmful than beneficial to America. England's political and economical stifling of the colonies was preventing the colonies and their people from becoming prosperous. He denies the need for British protection by arguing that they would never have been in the wars they were if it wasn't for British instigation in other parts of the world. He says England never cared for the colonies more than to exploit them for profits, and that was grounds for rebellion. He lays out a rudimentary system of representative democracy where each state is split into districts, each electing a representative who would serve in Congress, with a president elected from each state once before being elected from the same state twice. Although not what was agreed on later in the creation of the Constitution, his fight for democratic ideals were still massively successful.
My name is Mau Mau, and today I will be talking about Thomas Paine's Common Sense and the impact and effect it had on the United States. One of the key points in Common Sense was independence. Now, in Common Sense, Thomas Paine provided very persuasive arguments for the colonists to use to break away from British rule and to declare their independence. His clear and accessible writing style reached a broad audience, and it played a significant role in swaying public opinion towards supporting independence. Within Common Sense, there was also anti-monarchy ideals, which were used to criticize the monarchy and hereditary succession in Britain. This sentiment was essential in challenging British authority. Common Sense also greatly contributed to the creation of the Declaration of Independence. This was because Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson's ideals of natural rights and the pursuit of happiness were aligned. Now, Common Sense also started to popularize Republican ideals, as well as the idea that a government derives from the consent of the governed, and these pamphlets helped popularize these ideals. There was also a wide distribution of Common Sense. Like earlier, as Matthias said, it sold over 100,000 copies. It was kind of like today's Harry Potter in a way. Also, during the Revolution, this pamphlet boosted the morale of American troops as well as the supporters of independence. It reinforced the idea that this cause was worth fighting for. And now, for Continental Congress, Common Sense influenced members of the Congress, many of whom were already leaning towards independence, but were hesitant, and Thomas Paine's arguments gave them this additional motivation for their actions. In Common Sense, there was also advocacy for a democratic government. Now, Thomas Paine did talk about republicanism and the idea that governments come from the governed, and this had a lasting impact on the American political thought. It contributed to the development of democratic institutions within the US, and it influenced subsequent generations of American political leaders. And it did also influence the abolitionist movement later on. His advocacy for human rights within Common Sense were used by famous abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison as well as Frederick Douglass, which drew upon Common Sense for their arguments. Now, to summarize, Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which was written in 1776, was truly a pivotal pamphlet that ignited the flames of independence in the hearts of a young nation. He advocated for republicanism, democracy, challenged a hereditary monarchy in Britain. It united a diverse population with unwavering commitment to the cause of independence. It also influenced the Continental Congress, Founding Fathers, and the creation of the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Paine's work resonated throughout the country, serving as a call to humanity, treatise on individual rights, and a catalyst for political change.